This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, hello, everybody. We are here for another presentation. We have Sean with National Weather Service. He's going to tell us about the weather. Hopefully it's good.
All righty. Yeah. All right. As Samantha said, my name is Sean Palmquist. I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Billings. And today we're going to talk about kind of some flood awareness, different types of flood alerts, the different types of flooding, and then kind of take a look at what we're seeing as far as conditions heading into our typical flood season and what we could expect. So to start off with, just a little bit about the National Weather Service in Billings, just kind of give you an idea of the area we cover. Essentially, we cover South Central and Southeast Montana, as well as Sheridan County, Wyoming. And we go from essentially Bozeman Pass east to the Dakotas border. And it's 16 counties, roughly 250,000 people, and slightly smaller than the state of Pennsylvania as far as the area we cover. And we're one of 122 different offices that cover the United States, as well as some of the territories. So like Puerto Rico, American Samoa, and Guam. Just to kind of give you an idea. So we have coverage for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. As we all know, weather does not care what time of day it is. So things happen at all times of day. We have a staff of 23 different people, typically anywhere from 10 to 15 meteorologists with a minimum of 2 on duty at all times. And our staff also includes electronic and computer system experts. So people who go out and kind of service some of the radio transmitters, that sort of thing. All right, so first we're going to watch a video here. This is an old video, but it's a good video. All right, so obviously something you absolutely do not want to do is drive your vehicle through flooded waters. That was a good example of a flash flood. So now we're going to kind of talk about the two different types of flooding that we see. Flash floods, essentially, that has to do with rapid flooding. So water rising rapidly, that sort of thing. And then dam failure. Although we do have a few dams, Yellowtail on Bighorn Reservoir is the biggest in our area. Dam failure is a possibility as well. That can cause flash flooding. More common is river floods, so longer term flooding. So big snowpack in the mountains with warm temperatures, causing rivers to swell, along with a big precipitation event on top of that. Typically that's what we see. And then in the wintertime, especially along the Tongue and Yellowstone, we see ice jam flooding. So here's just some pictures. So this was July 7th, 2007, Billings. This particular one was a flash flood. So you had flooded streets, businesses and homes, underpasses were flooded. And then on the bottom here, you've got the Little Bighorn River near Crow Agency back in March of 2019. So this one was a combination of ice jam flooding along with just a big precipitation event and snow melting. ground was still frozen, so the water all ran off into the creeks and rivers, and it ended up shutting down I-90 for a while. All right, talking a little bit about flash floods. So they can occur from heavy and excessive rainfall and downstream in areas that may experience little or no rainfall. Not so much of an issue here in Montana, although it does happen to a certain extent. But places like southern Utah, the desert Southwest, they can have thunderstorms occur 50 to say 75 miles away from a location over a mountain. And all of a sudden, this dry canyon that you're walking through several hours later has a wall of water coming down it. So things to keep in mind. Key elements with flash floods: rainfall intensity, so how hard it's raining. Duration, so how hard in how amount of time. So slow moving thunderstorms are the ones that cause the most flash flooding. And then topography. Are you in a flat area, or are you in a very hilly area with a lot of kind of drainages and steep canyons that's going to funnel that water? And then soil conditions. So what I mean by that is, what's your soil made out of? Is it sand, so it actually soaks in the water pretty good, or is it clay, so you get a lot of runoff? So that's another key element. And then ground cover. So are you in an area that doesn't have any concrete or asphalt, like say Miles City in the city proper, or like a place like Billings? So that all plays in. All right, just to go through some of our kind of products that we issue for flood alerts here. We'll talk about river flooding here in a second, but typically if we see something on the horizon, you'll see us put out hydrologic outlooks. And essentially what that is it's the first indication that hazardous weather may develop. So we're starting to see a situation develop, say, several days prior, and we want to kind of get the word out. Tended to provide information to those who need considerable lead time to prepare for an event. So people that live next to a river and are going to prepare for the big snow melt, that sort of thing. Watches means to prepare for the possibility. So essentially conditions are favorable for the development of a particular weather event that could be a threat to life and property. Significant weather may impact a region, but location, timing, and severity is not fully known. And then moving on to warnings, this is when it's time to take action. So a particular weather event that threatens life or property is occurring or imminent. Significant weather impact is expected to move across a region with high certainty. So whereas a watch it's essentially significant weather may impact a region, we necessarily don't know the exact location and timing. A warning is for a very specific area, and if we're putting out a warning, it means we have high certainty in that weather event impacting you. And then advisories essentially mean be aware. So flooding that may cause significant inconvenience. If caution is not exercised, could lead to situations that may threaten life or property. So that is what we issue as far as our alerts. And now we're moving on to the river floods. So river floods occur from extended periods of moderate to heavy rainfall. Typically, you see gradual rises on area rivers and streams. Especially for our region, it's the spring snowmelt in, say, like the Beartooths and Absarokas coming down the Yellowstone, and up in the Bighorn Mountains, and that moving down the Tongue River. So for the river flooding, you can monitor river observations and forecasts. And we do have 2 points around Miles City. We have one on the Yellowstone at Miles City, and then one on the Tongue River just south of town in Miles City. And all those can be found by just going to water.weather.gov. More on those charts here in a few minutes. So as I mentioned, you can find them water.weather.gov, and the observations are provided mostly by the USGS. Sometimes not, but most of the time that's who we're getting it from. And the forecasts. So if you look at this chart here, the forecasts are the purple and the observations are the blue. Purple forecasts on that chart are provided by the National Weather Service. Essentially, they include 5 days of forecast precipitation and snowmelt or snowmelt. With that, we kind of take into consideration everything from the temperatures, how hot are the temperatures going to be, what's that snow going to do to the snowpack, and then how much of that snowpack is going to melt out, how long is it going to take to move down the rivers, and then is there going to be like a heavy precipitation event that will complicate things and kind of exasperate the situation. Now, on the same page, for each of these points, you can also look at historical data. And so if you're wanting to see how this compares to events in the past, you definitely can do that. So it also will give you kind of information as to as far as the gauge location, so the river gauge location. But you can see the different types of flood categories, historical crests, and then essentially recent crests. So what in most recent years, how high did the river get? All right, another flood video here. So this one was down in Houston, Texas. All it takes is just about 6 to 10 inches of water to start moving a vehicle. And that's why we always say, turn around, don't drown. You know, obey the traffic signals, road closure signs. As you can see, it didn't take much, and the water is very deep off the side of the road there. He's having to swim to safety. All right, so Miles City, no stranger to heavy rainfall events. And this actually, you know, it's getting to be 5-6 years ago, but in the grand scheme of things, not that long ago. This was on April 23rd to 24th in 2016. Miles City set its all-time daily rainfall record of 2.91 inches. So almost 3 inches of rain in one day. The old record was 2.71 back in 1964. This particular event had significant ponding of water. Did actually have a little bit of hail with it, so you did have some floating ice with it as well. But as you can see, the underpass downtown there was flooded out, and just a lot of water. Going more into flash flooding here. So in most recent years, an event that caused a lot of damage associated with flash flooding took place along the Colorado Front Range back in September of 2013. This particular event caused 8 fatalities, $2 to $3 billion in damage. 18,000 people had to be evacuated. 19,000 homes and businesses were damaged, and nearly 500 miles of roadway were damaged and 50 bridges destroyed. So very destructive. All right, this is an event, again, happened, I would say several years ago now, but we just don't have a lot of events that have occurred in the last few years. But this particular one was in June of 2015 out near the town of Shepherd, so eastern Yellowstone County. And this was caused by a slow moving thunderstorm. So estimated 3 to 5 inches of rainfall in 1 hour. Water flowed over Pleasant Hollow Road. And along with the rainfall, we actually had significant hail that piled up in drainages. And so that ended up clogging culverts and things like that. And so then the water moved over the road and ended up washing the road out. So remember, kind of talked about the duration being a factor and just how heavy. So in this case, it rained very heavily and very slow moving thunderstorm. So 3 to 5 inches in 1 hour. Another video showing some flash flooding. This one was in Las Vegas. Again, Las Vegas, no stranger to flash flooding. So pretty loud here. But if you look towards so essentially a highway, and you look towards the median, and water is essentially flowing down through the median, taking a bunch of debris with it, and then disappearing under the road and going downstream. Let's see. So this particular case, a car actually did get into the water because they decided to drive through the flooded roadway, and people tried to rescue the person. So they were having to put rescuers in harm's way as well. So again, please do not drive through flooded waterways. You're putting yourself at risk, and you're putting anybody who has to come and try and rescue you. All right, so you can stay informed on a lot of things. You can stay informed by just going to the National Weather Service webpage. So it's just weather.gov, and it'll bring you to a map of the country. So you don't have to go just to southern Montana. You can literally pick a location anywhere in the US or put in your actual address or just the zip code, and it'll give you a forecast. But if you click on southern Montana, it'll bring you to our local National Weather Service Billings page. And on there, you'll see a lot of different things like any weather products we have out. So say like a flood warning, that sort of thing. But also what we call weather stories. So essentially it's a graphic that will kind of depict any hazardous weather, give you some information about that. Say like a winter storm, maybe possible snowfall amounts, that type of thing that we see coming in the near future. So like I said, weather stories essentially, it outlines the hazardous weather that we're going to expect or are expecting. So a good way to stay informed. So everybody, or most people nowadays, I should say, have smartphones, and you can get wireless emergency alerts sent to your smartphone. So these are emergency messages sent out by authorized government alerting authorities. So National Weather Service is one of those. Essentially, you can get alerts for severe thunderstorms, tornado warnings, and flash flood warnings. Now for the severe thunderstorms, it's your typical, say like a 60-mile-an-hour wind, quarter size hail. You're not going to get those. It's for the most damaging severe thunderstorms. So like winds in excess of 80 miles per hour or hail that's larger than 2 inches. So the very damaging severe thunderstorms. And then you can also get alerted for amber alerts and other presidential alerts. Most of the time you can find the settings for these on your phone by going to settings, notifications, and government alerts. And you can find more information about these at just ready.gov/alerts. Now, these are just simple messages to kind of give you a heads up. Essentially, what they do is it kind of bases your location off of cell towers, and kind of just pings that area. And it'll be a simple message that comes through. So we want you to consult other resources for more details. And if you are looking for a good kind of mobile app, the Red Cross has a great mobile app for being alerted to severe weather. So they have a tornado app that alerts for tornadoes and severe thunderstorms, and an emergency app that alerts for 35 different types of weather and emergency alerts. So what's nice about this is that an audible siren will kind of wake your phone up even when the app is closed. So you don't have to be on your phone at all times. And then just to kind of give a plug here too, we do post a lot of information on our Facebook and Twitter pages if you did not know that we had these. All right, another flooding video. So just remember we've been saying, turn around, don't drown.
You're running late, and your path is blocked by water crossing the road. It doesn't look that deep, so you decide to drive through it. Bad decision. And it may be your last.
All right.
You're running.
Okay, so moving on from the different types of flood alerts and just flood awareness, now we're going into our essentially flooding outlook for the remainder of spring into summer. Just to give you an idea, so this was the temperatures for essentially the last year. And if you remember, last summer was very warm. So for the last year, that kind of skewed things towards above normal temperatures overall, even though recently we've had some cooler temps. Looking at precipitation overall for the last year, by and large for most of Montana, we've actually seen a precipitation deficit, so less than normal precipitation for most of the area. You can see there's little pockets in, say, like southern Custer and the Powder River and Carter, but by and large, we've been experiencing a drought across the state. Taking a look at the current soil moisture conditions, so how much moisture is in the top part of the soil. You can see that the recent storms that we've had in April into May have really helped out the eastern part of the state. Last year, things were very dry. But as you notice, if you go towards the mountains and the foothills, say like west of Billings, things are still pretty dry overall, but better across the southeast Montana. Taking a look at the latest drought monitor here. So for Custer County and southeast Montana there, rated as a moderate drought, although we have seen some improvement in recent weeks. Other parts of the state, all the way up to extreme drought. So still dealing with drought. This is the seasonal drought outlook. So this goes through July. And essentially what it's showing for a good chunk of Montana now is that drought remains but improves. And in the far southeast part of the state, drought removal is likely. So based on the outlooks for the rest of spring and what we've seen so far, should see a little bit of improving conditions across the far southeast. Just to give you an idea, the average monthly precipitation for Miles City, we are still going into our wettest month of the year for Miles City, so June. So 2.51 inches is the normal precipitation in June. And July, again, another top 3 wettest month. So we're still looking at the potential for some precipitation before things really start to dry out as you get towards August and into fall. Current snowpack. So things are currently right around normal to slightly above normal. After we had some good storms come through in April and into the first part of May. Otherwise, we were seeing below normal conditions for the fall and winter time. But that's really good for water supply. Taking a look at Wyoming, kind of the same thing. We were below normal until the last, say, month and a half. And the late winter and spring storms helped boost our snowpack up in the Bighorns. See the tongue basins at about 117% of normal. Looking ahead through July, so essentially when we see our typical flood season, the seasonal temperature outlooks are showing a pretty good nudge towards above normal temperatures. And taking a look at the precipitation, we're kind of on the edge of what I'd say below normal precipitation, and what we say equal chances. And essentially what that means is it's kind of just anybody's guess. Essentially, there's just not a strong signal that points us to one way or the other. There's equal chances for below normal precipitation, near normal precipitation, and above normal precipitation. So really, though, we're just leaning towards a hot and dry forecast through the next couple of months. Now, taking a look at the seasonal flood outlook. So these charts here, so this one's for the Tongue River at Miles City. They show the weekly chance of exceeding river stage forecast at the Tongue River at Miles City. And this goes from essentially the 1st of May through the middle of July. And what this is showing, so if you see it like the light kind of cream or yellow, that's a very, would say low probability. And essentially the most likely probability is that darker blue color. And if you look, minor floodings at 10 feet. So the outlook for the river for flooding is very low. So we're not expecting flooding at this time. Taking a look at the Yellowstone River at Miles City, same time period. And again, like I said, so the most probable outlook of what would occur is in the dark blue. And again, it shows the river probabilities staying much below normal. And that's going through the middle of June. So typically we see the Yellowstone and Tongue kind of peak around mid-June. And at this point in time, does not look like we'll be approaching any flooding or having any flooding issues at this time. Although that can change if we get a big precipitation event on a period of a lot of snow melt. Going into a kind of a regional look here. So the flood risk is exceptionally low at this time. So essentially less than a 25% chance of flooding occurring across the region. And these are based on conditions as of today. All right, and one last thing I wanted to talk about. If you are interested in taking rainfall and snow measurements, you can be part of what they call COCO-RAS. So the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network can report rainfall and snowfall if you're part of that. And if you look at the map on the bottom there, we do have a few around Miles City already, but the more the merrier. And essentially, it's a volunteer network that reports the rain and hail and snow daily. And it's really important information because actually what you report gets ingested into the river models, and they can base the river forecast off of some of the information that you provide. So you're actually providing some input to that. But that's all I've got. I'll open it up to any questions if anybody has any.
I've got a question. Can
Sure.
you tell me, you mentioned river stage. What exactly does that mean?
So essentially river stage is kind of a predetermined level that is used by the gauges, and essentially based on, I would say, previous history and input from local emergency officials and impacts, we kind of determine this level. And then if the river is forecast to get over that certain level or approach it, then we put out things like flood watches and flood warnings for that. So it's really based off of impacts that we can then put a warning out for, if that makes sense. It's kind of just a level where we can, it's kind of a decision point.
Great, thank you.
Yep. All right, any other questions? All right,
Sean?
not hearing anything. Yeah.
I want to thank you for your time then, for joining us. I also want to thank everyone who stayed online for this or that is viewing this when I get it on our YouTube channel. I also want to say that there are 2 more presentations that will be out tomorrow from the Army Corps of Engineers and KLJ. They will also refer to more localized projects that Miles City is doing. And other than that, I want to again thank everybody for their time, and especially the presenters for taking their time to present to us.
Right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.
Thanks.